A vast galactic war erupted when the Dominion, an ancient empire spanning thousands of worlds, sought to crush the upstart species that had disrupted the delicate balance of power. Humanity, a young race barely a century into interstellar travel, had become a problem. Their rapid adaptability, unpredictable tactics, and refusal to submit had turned them into a thorn in the Dominion's side. To the Dominion, this war was a mere formality, an extermination order to be carried out with ease. The first strike was swift. Entire colonies burned in the dark silence of space. Orbital bombardments wiped out millions in an instant. The Dominion's war machine moved with precision honed over millennia of conquest. Yet, amidst the wreckage, the first mistake was made. The Dominion believed the war was already won. They did not understand that humanity did not break. It adapted. Survivors fled to hidden strongholds, using asteroid belts and abandoned stations as makeshift refuges. A desperate resistance formed, composed of smugglers, engineers, and soldiers who had lost everything. They scavenged Dominion technology, reverse engineering weapons and shields at an unprecedented rate. What should have taken decades took months. The Dominion expected retreat. Instead, they found something far worse. On the edge of a dying star system, a Dominion fleet of 30 warships hunted a handful of human vessels. The battle should have been over in minutes, but something was wrong. The human ships moved in patterns Dominion computers could not predict. Energy signatures flickered, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Dominion ships began colliding with invisible mines. Some found themselves being boarded before their alarms even activated. When the Dominion admiral ordered a full retreat, half his fleet was already lost. This was the moment the Dominion first recognized the true threat of humanity. They had seen their technology repurposed, their tactics turned against them. The war was no longer a simple extermination. It had become a puzzle they did not know how to solve. Back on Earth, the war was transforming society. Governments collapsed, replaced by military alliances with singular focus. War scientists merged biology with technology. Soldiers underwent neural enhancements, allowing them to react faster than any organic being. Swarms of drones operated by a single mind rained fire upon the enemy. Each battle forged humanity into something unrecognizable. The Dominion escalated. Entire planets were wiped clean. Every time humanity seemed on the verge of extinction, they returned stronger. They developed ships that could fold space in ways the Dominion had never seen. They created weapons that adapted mid-battle, analyzing enemy defenses and rewriting their own attack protocols in real time. The war spread beyond the Dominion's control. Other alien races, once fearful of resistance, saw humanity's defiance and began their own rebellions. The Dominion's vast empire, held together by centuries of fear, began to unravel. What had started as a simple extermination turned into something far worse for the Dominion. Humanity was no longer just a species. It was an idea, a force that could not be erased. The war had changed them, transformed them into something more than they were. And the Dominion finally realized the truth. They had not been fighting to destroy humanity. They had been forging its ascension. The Dominion Council convened in secrecy deep within the core of their empire, a place where no war had ever touched or the will of their rulers had stood unchallenged for millennia. But now that will was breaking. Reports from the front lines spoke of fleets vanishing without a trace, of Dominion generals defecting, of entire systems falling to chaos. Humanity was no longer a nuisance. It was an existential threat. The Council ordered an emergency deployment of the Apex Fleet, the most powerful armada in Dominion history. Thousands of warships equipped with planet-cracking weaponry were dispatched to crush humanity once and for all. The order was clear: no surrender, no negotiation, complete annihilation. Humanity had no centralized leadership, no homeworld left untouched. But they had something far more dangerous than unity. They had adaptability. The scattered remnants of Earth's nations had fused into something unprecedented, a war civilization that existed solely to overcome the impossible. A single human fleet intercepted the Apex Armada near the dead system of Vorthal Prime. Outnumbered and outgunned, they should have been erased from existence. Instead, the Dominion fleet encountered something terrifying. Their ships were not fighting against humans. They were fighting against the unknown. Swarms of drones moved in patterns no AI could track. Warships blinked in and out of existence. Entire Dominion vessels were hacked mid-battle, forced to turn their weapons on their own. The Dominion's mighty dreadnoughts unleashed weapons that had shattered entire civilizations, but the humans did not fight conventionally. They fought like creatures that had abandoned the rules of war entirely. Dominion targeting systems malfunctioned. Gravity itself twisted against them. Time dilation anomalies spread across the battlefield, causing parts of their fleet to move at different speeds than others. The apex fleet, a force that had never known defeat, was being dismantled not by sheer power but by something far worse: incomprehension. Behind the front lines, the remaining humans were no longer merely surviving. They were evolving. The war had forced them to push the boundaries of science and technology beyond all reason. Cybernetic integration had become the norm. Soldiers with neural links to entire fleets could control hundreds of ships with a thought. Their minds operated at speeds no Dominion strategist could comprehend. On the shattered remains of a once thriving moon, a group of human scientists activated a prototype device. It was not a weapon in the conventional sense. It was something new, something never before seen in this galaxy. A Dominion scouting force arrived to investigate, and in an instant they ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not annihilated, simply erased, removed from all records as if they had never been. The Dominion had sought to end humanity before it could rise. Instead, they had unknowingly created their own gods. The Apex fleet was gone, not just defeated but erased in a manner the Dominion could not understand. Across the galaxy, entire Dominion warfronts collapsed as news spread of the impossible. Humanity had done more than survive, they had transcended war itself. The Dominion High Command refused to believe what their own sensors recorded. They dispatched spies to infiltrate the remnants of human-controlled space to find some logical explanation for the madness unfolding. What they discovered was beyond anything their minds could comprehend. Humanity was no longer bound by conventional physics. They had reached a point where war was no longer fought with weapons but with reality itself. Their ships no longer traveled through space in the traditional sense, instead they arrived where they intended to be, bypassing time and distance as if neither were relevant. On the former Dominion world of Zelvora, an occupied planet that had once housed billions, the impossible occurred. A single human soldier walked through the Dominion garrison defenses, simply ceasing to be in one place and appearing in another, as if the concept of distance no longer applied to him. The garrison fired every weapon they had, but nothing struck him, as if he existed outside of causality. When he reached the command center, the Dominion officers ceased to exist. No screams, no battle, just absence. When Dominion reinforcements arrived, there was no trace of the soldier, only the planet now under human control, with no sign of a fight having taken place. Across the galaxy, similar stories emerged. Human forces no longer fought in wars, they simply took what they desired, rewriting reality itself to their advantage. Entire Dominion fleets vanished into the void with no record of their existence remaining. Planets that had been under Dominion rule for thousands of years simply changed overnight, their histories rewritten to have always belonged to humanity. Panic spread through the Dominion ranks. Their ancient war doctrines, their weapons, their fleets, their soldiers, none of it mattered anymore. They were fighting against something beyond their understanding. They had mistaken humanity for another mortal species, but what they faced now was something else entirely. The Dominion Council met in desperation, searching for an answer, but deep down they knew the truth. The war was already lost. The humans had become something far beyond any civilization the galaxy had ever known. They had become myths, living legends, walking gods. And they were just getting started. The Dominion's empire crumbled faster than anyone could have predicted, not because their fleets were destroyed, not because their leaders were assassinated, but because reality itself was slipping away from them. Across the galaxy, entire Dominion systems woke up to find that they had always been human, that their history, their records, their very biology had been rewritten as if the Dominion had never existed at all. The remaining Dominion warlords tried to fight back, but their weapons simply refused to function against human forces. Their fleets lost cohesion, their soldiers forgot why they were even at war. A desperate resistance formed among the last remnants of the Dominion High Command gathering on the ancient fortress world of Varlis Prime, the strongest military bastion in their history. Every surviving Dominion warship, every remaining elite soldier, every piece of technology they had left was brought to this final stand. But the humans did not arrive with fleets or armies. They arrived as whispers in the air, as shadows in the mind. Dominion soldiers turned on each other without realizing why. Commanders issued orders that made no sense. Entire battalions surrendered to enemies that weren't there. The very fabric of what the Dominion considered reality was being undone around them. In the final moments of Varlis Prime, the Dominion's last emperor stood alone in the grand hall of his fortress, his mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. He saw his empire collapsing, not in battle but in history itself. Records changed before his eyes, his memories blurred. The Dominion had ruled for thousands of years, and yet now it had never existed at all. And then he was no longer in his fortress. He was standing on an unknown world under a golden sky. Before him stood a single human, a figure whose features shifted and flickered like they were not bound by space or time. The Emperor tried to speak, but no words came out. The human simply raised a hand, and the Emperor understood. The war had never been about survival. It had been about transformation. Humanity had become something beyond the limits of physical existence, beyond the rules that had governed all civilizations before them. The Dominion had not lost to an enemy, they had merely been left behind. As the last remnants of the Dominion faded from history, the galaxy stood in silent awe. The war that had begun as an extermination had ended in ascension. Humanity had not just won. They had become something greater than victory itself. The galaxy struggled to comprehend what had happened. The Dominion was gone, not just defeated but erased. Their history, their people, their worlds had been rewritten by something beyond understanding. The war had not ended in conquest or destruction but in transformation. The surviving alien civilizations watched in awe and terror as humanity reshaped existence itself. Some species had fought alongside the Dominion, others had hidden in the shadows waiting for the war to end. But now they all faced the same question. What would these new gods do next? On the once dead world of Xyrath, a place where life had never existed before, mountains shifted, rivers carved themselves into the land, and an entire ecosystem sprang into being in mere moments. There was no great machine, no terraforming process, just will made real. On the edge of known space, a war between two ancient alien factions ended in an instant as their weapons vanished from existence and their leaders forgot why they had ever fought. Entire civilizations awoke to find that their greatest conflicts had never happened, their histories rewritten, their futures changed. A coalition of surviving empires gathered in secret to discuss what could be done. Some called for surrender, others for diplomacy, but a few whispered the unthinkable, that perhaps humanity was no longer a civilization at all but something else, something unknowable. In the deep void beyond the galactic core, a fleet of warships belonging to the once powerful Zentari Dominion's oldest allies gathered in defiance. They had survived the fall of the Dominion by hiding, now they prepared to strike before humanity could turn its attention to them. Their attack never came. As their fleet powered its weapons, reality flickered and they were no longer in their ships. They stood on an unknown planet, watching as their vessels disassembled themselves piece by piece, floating into the sky as if they had never been constructed at all. A single human stood before them, not armored, not armed, simply present. "You are afraid," the human said, "but there is nothing to fear." The Zentari leaders did not understand. They fell to their knees expecting execution, conquest, something, anything that made sense. But there was no war left to fight. Humanity had no need for destruction. They had moved beyond it. The galaxy watched in silence as the last resistance crumbled, not in battle but in acceptance. The war that had once threatened to wipe humanity from existence had done something else entirely. It had forced them to evolve into something beyond war, beyond death, beyond even time itself. And now the galaxy belonged to them, not by conquest, not by force, but simply because they had willed it so. The galaxy stood in silent awe as humanity reshaped existence, not through war, not through diplomacy, but through will alone. The surviving civilizations no longer saw them as a species but as a force, an inevitability. The fear of destruction faded, replaced by something stranger. Acceptance. On the ancient world of Dravonis Prime, a planet untouched for millions of years, alien archaeologists uncovered ruins older than any known civilization. Structures of impossible geometry, inscriptions that seemed to rewrite themselves when observed. They believed they had discovered the remains of a forgotten godlike race. Then the humans arrived. They did not excavate, they did not study. They simply walked through the ruins as if remembering something long lost. One of them placed a hand on the ancient stone, and in an instant the ruins were no longer ruins. The city stood whole and alive as if it had never been abandoned. Towers stretched into the sky, streets filled with lights that had not burned in millennia. But what terrified the archaeologists most was not the restoration. It was the realization that the inscriptions had changed. They now told the story of a war that had forged gods. A war that had just ended. In the depths of space where time and light moved slowly, great beings once thought to be myths stirred from their eternal slumber. Entities older than the Dominion, older than the galaxy itself, beings that had watched civilizations rise and fall without care. They had seen countless empires reach for power only to be consumed by forces beyond their understanding. But humanity was different. They had not been consumed. They had become something new. One of these ancient entities reached out across the void, extending its will toward a lone human floating in the darkness of deep space. A test. A challenge. The human did not resist. They did not fight. They simply looked back. And in that moment the entity understood. For the first time in untold eons, the ancient being felt something it had forgotten. Uncertainty. Humanity had not just rewritten history. They were beginning to rewrite reality itself. And even the oldest powers in the universe did not know what would come next. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. The war that had once threatened to erase humanity had instead turned them into something beyond comprehension. The ancient beings that had watched over the galaxy for eternity now found themselves gazing at a force they did not understand. On the edge of time itself, where the oldest remnants of existence faded into the void, the great cosmic entities gathered. Beings that had seen the birth of galaxies, creatures that had existed before the concept of mortality had meaning. They had never feared anything. They had never been challenged. Until now. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy in the way others had. They had not burned worlds, they had not enslaved races, they had not crushed civilizations beneath their rule. They had simply changed everything. Entire species woke up to find that their wars had never happened, their wounds had never been inflicted, their greatest losses had been undone. Planets long destroyed now thrived as if devastation had never touched them. Civilizations that had fallen into darkness now stood in golden light. The concept of time itself began to lose meaning. History was no longer fixed. It was rewritten in real time, shaped by the will of those who had ascended beyond mere mortality. The oldest beings of the universe realized they had a choice. They could challenge these new gods, fight against the impossible, risk destruction at the hands of something that had already rewritten existence itself. Or they could learn. One by one the ancient ones made their choice. Some faded into the void, unwilling to accept a universe they could no longer control. Others approached the humans not as conquerors and not as enemies but as students. And the humans welcomed them. For all their power, all their transcendence, humanity had never forgotten what they once were. They did not seek to rule. They did not seek to destroy. They simply sought to create. As the universe shifted around them, as the old laws of reality gave way to something new, the final truth became clear. The war that had begun with the goal of humanity's extinction had not ended in their survival. It had ended with their ascension. And the universe would never be the same again.